try. Let's see. Hello, we are live. Yay. So I am Corey Walmsley. I'm a writing coach, a book editor, and best-selling author of The Spark Method, How to Write a Book for Your Business Fast, as well as the author of 7 other books that are fiction. And this is my friend, Dr. Christina Tarantola.
Hello, everyone.
So today we wanted to talk about how you can use your book in your business, because your book isn't just this standalone thing that you write and you print it and you go, yeah, I'm an author, and then you don't do anything else with it. So you have to have a plan, you have to have some ideas, and especially during times like this when everybody's kind of at home, there's a lot of uncertainty. A book is a really great thing to have because it's something you can do exclusively online. It's something you don't have to touch anybody to give them this fabulous content. They can hop on Amazon and buy it. You can, do things with your digital copy. So I wanted to talk with Christina today about some of the stuff that she has used her book for, because she's written 3 books, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and she has been in business for several years now and has, seen some different things coming and going in her business. So I'm going to turn this over to Christina, let her talk a little bit about herself and what she does, and we'll keep going.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so grateful to be here today. And I know some of my pharmacist friends just recently joined the group. So hello, Judy, Gina, all of you other fabulous women in Corey's group. I'm really excited to be here today. And so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Christina Tarantola, and I help visionary women to really remove blocks that are preventing them from moving forward in business or from getting to whatever goal that they are really looking to achieve in their life. So people come to me for different reasons. I am a former pharmacist, author, hypnotherapist, transformation coach. I like to think of myself as an alchemist. I love to really help women to release those subconscious blocks holding them back so that they can accelerate into their next level of income and impact. So that's really my passion. That's what I love to do. I didn't always do this. I was actually a health coach before, and I know we're going to bring that up in this conversation and talk about, pivoting your business and how you can still use some of the books that you've written in the past and really still serve your future clients. So that's really what I'm passionate about. Anything with spirituality, healing, transformation, that is my favorite thing to talk about. So, and that's actually what all of my books are about too. So excited to talk about that today.
Yeah, we actually, it's funny how Christina and I met. Somebody recommended me as an editor for her 3rd book.
Mm-hmm.
We had talked about that, connected over that, and so we worked together on her book. And then down the road, when I needed a transformation, I actually joined Christina's program, the Quantum Queen. And so, if anybody has seen me be very different, like last summer, this lady is really one of the big reasons why. So, her books have been, part of this journey of her business. And, starting out as a health coach and doing these books, what do you think was really important about working with them at that point, and having these books as part of your business?
So the first book that I wrote was back in 2014, and I always loved to write. Even when I was a little girl, I had a journal and I used to keep it under my bed. And because I grew up in an environment where I really couldn't express myself, like my emotions, like I was a very emotional, sensitive kid. And I still am. I can feel energy and I'm very empathic. I'm sure a lot of you watching can relate to that too. So I had to journal. I had to get my emotions out some way. So I always had journals. And I knew as I grew up that I had a story inside of me, but I didn't really know what that was going to look like. It kind of hit me around age 18. I'm like, I'm going to write a book someday, but I don't really know what it's going to be about yet. And actually 2014 was really when I started to get that itch to, really put all of those thoughts, all of those journals down into a book. And so that's where I created my first book, Revealing Your Inner Radiance. I actually traveled to Bali to do it, which I know is a little bit extreme. You don't have to do that for your first book, but I got the invitation from Mastin Kipp. He's a personal development guru, and I went with 30 other women to Bali to really learn how to write a book, formatting, and really getting your message out there in an authentic way. So that was a really cool experience. And that was where I learned a lot about, just unleashing my creativity. And it kind of was really great because at that time I had my business as, really just starting out bare bones as a health coach. And it immediately established me as an expert, because when you write a book, it's like, whoa, this person really put themselves out there, and it's showing people a level of expertise and confidence that you really know what you're talking about, your stuff. So I felt like that was kind of my real breakthrough, was actually putting that book out there. So I feel like if you're a person out there that has that soul nudge, like, I know I want to write a book, I just don't know how, this is the perfect conversation, because I had that for so long. And it took me about 7 years to actually take action on it. And I'm so glad that I did, because now, once you write a book one time, it's like boom, boom, boom. I'm talking to the person who wrote 8 books over here,
Yeah, it's just, you know the process, and you get excited. And yeah, I don't have any tattoos, but I know everybody says the same thing about tattoos. So I always compare it, like, once you get one, you got to keep going.
Well, that's a great thing. Yeah.
Okay, so you then, after you got the first one done, you wrote the second one. That third one, I know that was when we met.
Yeah.
I've seen you go through this transformation in your business too. So talk a little bit about, you changed over to being more of a transformation coach.
Yeah.
So once you got to that point, like, what did you decide about your books? Did you have any feeling like, oh, throwing these out the door, or, what did you feel about them at that point?
Yeah, so I always tell my clients this too, because they get so fixated on, like, well, this is my ideal client, and this is what I have to stick to, and like, this is what my tombstone is going to read at the end of my life. Like, so and so was a health coach. It's like, no, you're allowed to pivot your business, you're allowed to grow and expand. And a lot of those concepts that I, shared and wrote about in those 3 books, even before this transition from me going from a health coach to transformation, I can still use that. I can still repurpose that. And a lot of those concepts are still weaved in there, like the healing concepts that I still talk about to this day. So I feel like you can always repurpose. There's never anything wasted. Like, I would never, throw those out the window and say, oh, that was a waste. So yeah, I absolutely believe in pivoting and expanding, the things that you talk about. I feel like if we were to stay stagnant, that's not growth. We're not growing that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like whenever we are writing an authentic book, a lot of those same things are going to be true.
Right.
There are like our core beliefs. So you can absolutely look at them from a different perspective. Even 5-10 years later, I'm actually in the process of going back and revising a book that I put out in 2012. That I started writing, and I didn't realize this until I double clicked in the header, and this date popped up there that you couldn't see before. It said August 2006, and I was like, oh my God, that's when I started writing that book. And going back at this point and rereading some of that stuff, I was like, okay, I'm looking at it from a completely different perspective. And it was just interesting to see that, like, yes, this is still stuff that I think is valuable to put out there, but I'm putting a new twist on it today. And so I feel like you can kind of do the same thing, as you're transitioning businesses too. You're putting a new twist on some of these, like, core concepts that you had, and especially with your books. And I know you mentioned that when you were, when you decided that you wanted to put something out to kind of help people during this time, that you actually offered one of your books. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use your book, especially, now with the digital age, we have access to ebooks and, so many different platforms. So what I actually thought about when COVID-19 started, my mind automatically went to, how can I help? Because I know that a lot of people are experiencing a wide range of emotions right now. So I actually put together a PDF with clickable links. And my third book was something that I gave as a resource. So I put it on Dropbox, and I allowed people to just go in and be able to read it, so that, maybe somebody out there might get some relief from some of the tips that I put into that book. So that was really cool to be able to give back in that way. So your book can serve so many different purposes. And it's really about kind of using your intuition, using that creativity to, you know, maybe you feel like one day sending it to a potential client. You're like, hey, I would really love for you to look at this and see, like, you know, some of how I work with women, or, you know, whatever your business is. So I think that's another really great way too, to build that know, like, and trust factor. And what better way than through a book that is so personal and has your footprint, your signature on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like people really believe that books are so valuable because of the amount of time we invest in writing them and putting them all together. And I mean, you know, a lot of people compare your book to your baby. It really is. So if you're out there saying, you know, hey, you know, you can have my book, like, that's really a big piece of you.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of people be really touched by that. Like, you know, whenever we're doing launches and stuff, and people are like, oh my God, you're giving away your book. Yes, I need that. Yeah, and it becomes an evergreen marketing tool for you too.
Mm-hmm.
You've said before, actually, I included a quote from you in
Yeah.
the book, because I was scrolling through Facebook the one day, and you said that somebody had read your book. I don't think it was even somebody you knew, that somebody read your book and then they contacted you. You know, tell me about that one.
So that was that was like a God divine appointment experience, because I feel I do a lot with like setting intentions and putting my energy out to attract the women. I'm like, you know, God, just send me the women that need my help, who I can really serve. And so it comes through in different ways. And that one was just proof of that. So somebody that I had known from 7 years ago had a friend who had read my book, and she was telling the person that I knew about it. So that person contacted me last April and then became a client of mine. So it works in mysterious ways. You never know who's reading your book. I mean, someone could just buy it off Amazon and you would never know exactly who that person is. So that's really cool too. You never know, you know, who's going to contact you or who is touched by your words. I feel like that was one of the real reasons why I wanted to write a book in the first place, was I wanted to get it out and impact somebody's life. And I feel like that's such a beautiful way to do it. You never know who you're going to impact that way. So that was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, even if somebody reads your book and they say, hey, this isn't for me, it's pretty rare that somebody's just going to throw a book in the garbage too.
Yeah.
One thing to have like a brochure or something, and somebody's going to read it and go, oh yeah, not for me. And they'll toss that. But a book, they're either going to donate it or they'll give it to a friend.
Yeah.
I mean, you run across all kinds of stuff at like the half price bookstore and on Amazon. So people aren't tossing this stuff. So even if it wasn't a connection there, chances are there's going to be a connection down the road. Somebody will find it even, you know, 5-10 years from now. And, you know, if you still have the same website, they'll come right back.
Yeah.
There was another one that I wanted. Look at my notes here real quick. Oh, yes. You had said that you've had cases where people like have bought it from your website and then later on they become a client. And then you mentioned that you did an interview in 2014 talking about your book, which it's so important. If you have a book, if you're an author, make sure you let everybody know that you're an author. And I want to make sure that you know that. This, like, if I could put glitter and stars around this, make sure people know that. That should not ever be a secret. Introduce yourself as an author. Make sure author's in your bio everywhere. I mean, buy a t-shirt that says author. Make sure people know that, because even if they don't buy it right now, or they, you know, don't buy your book at all, they're going to remember, and down the road they're going to say, you know what, I think she had a book. And I think this is what happened was you were talking about your book on this podcast, and then the podcast was in 2014.
And then she just recently reached out, because the concepts that I talked about from that book were things that she wanted to share around COVID-19. I can't remember what specifically it was, but yeah, I came back around and she just reposted it on iTunes and Spotify. So you never know.
Yeah, and the nice thing, like when you're an author and you're using that, you know, that instant expert status, excuse me, when you're using that status and you're pitching the podcast, then that ends up being an evergreen tool too, because people don't usually delete their old podcasts. So like you went on in 2014, and I mean, this is 6 years later.
Yeah.
People are still going to be going through and listening to your interviews. I know I have all the podcasts I've been on listed on my website. So if somebody just wants to go and listen to some of my interviews, they could go in and listen to those. And I'm talking about my books, and I'm mentioning, like, especially when I launched, this is important. So I love that that has been kind of coming full circle for you. So, if I know sometimes people feel like this is a lot of work to write a book, and you don't see the results right away all the time, but it's one of those ripple effects sort of things. So you kind of have to like put that out there and then wait for it to grow.
Exactly. And like I said, you never know who it'll touch or who shares the book. Like you said, that, a physical book or even recommends your book. There's so many different possibilities, and it's multiplying yourself, right? That ability to multiply, just like with a video, you can share it to a million people. So that's the really cool part about it too, is your book can touch so many people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I know that you do some live events. Have you been doing anything with your books? Because I know like the transition. Have you been using them at all, like with your live events or with speaking or anything?
Yeah, so typically whenever I do have a live event, I'll have books available for sale, and I used to have them in the back of my trunk, and I always had like a big box of them, and I actually sold through all of them. So now they're available on my website. I'm hoping that we get back to normal life soon so I can have another event. And yeah, I just think it's a really great way for people to get to know you a little bit better. Then they feel more comfortable with maybe reaching out to you or saying, they know that like you're the expert in spirituality and transformation, and they know who to call on whenever maybe they have a friend that needs help or whatever. So I feel like that's a really good tool to be able to give people, because you never know when someone might need you, especially as a business owner. It's important.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about when you were writing your books. Did you ever feel like, as you were writing, like, oh my God, I'm just dumping all my knowledge out, and people are going to read this and nothing's going to happen afterwards. They're just going to read it and they'll never talk to me again. They'll just read my book and get all my knowledge. Do you ever feel like that?
Well,
I think that's another fear.
I feel like that's the difference between like reading about going on a roller coaster versus being on a roller coaster, right? Like you can read a book, but until you actually experience what it's like to work with me, it's a totally different experience, right? So I feel like the book is kind of like that little sneak preview. It's like, hey, here's what I have.
So appetizing.
More. And then it's a totally different experience working in a group coaching setting or one-on-one or hypnosis or whatever. So I feel like it comes to life when you're really engaging with a coach or a business professional, and the book is kind of like that intro. So that's what I would say.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you on that. I feel like I know I've seen a shift in my perspective of that too, like especially since working with you. The whole transformation thing is that that abundance mindset too, is feeling like, yes, I can give some, and people who need just that will get that, and that's fine. But the people who need more, they're definitely going to come back, and they're definitely going to follow me. They're definitely going to reach out and say, hey, I need your help. So I feel like that's a big part of it too, is getting your head around that, like, yes, I can give, I have to give to receive.
Yeah, I think that and as you were just talking, I got this image of an open heart. Like when you give with an open heart, that's when you can receive. But if you're closed and you're like, oh, I have to keep all my secrets to myself and I can't share, it's like, then you're not going to allow anything in. Mm-hmm. You need to be able to have that open heart and be like, hey, I want to share some valuable things or tools or tips. And that's when you allow yourself to receive. Mm-hmm. Like that. So I love that, the energetic perspective too of that.
Yeah, it's been interesting because I'm somebody who, like, I came from this writing background where I could just sit down and bang out books like it was nothing and have absolutely no feeling about it. And then to be talking to authors who are going through this process and seeing, what their real fears are, it's been very interesting. And then I've started kind of using that as my stepping off point to go, oh, okay, this is actually a real thing. What's going on here? And yeah, so it's been very interesting, especially like since we worked together and kind of getting your perspective on some things, like how I'm doing things in my business, and that's reflecting back into my into my book writing too, and how I help authors. So that's been
beautiful. And I can see, yeah, your energy has shifted completely. You're way more like, you're very open. Your energy is very open, and it's so great to see. And that's really where you start to attract the people that need you. So, you know, that's the number one thing that I think helps, you know, with our journey together, that we, you know, with the energy work, then you can translate that and help your clients and identify with them. Oh, this is where I see. So I feel like it's kind of that ripple effect, which is really nice.
Yeah. And I've talked to a lot of people who tell me like, oh, they're downloading a book, you know, like downloading, like physical download, they'll be woken up in the middle of the night with these ideas, and then they're stopping themselves after that. So it's been wild trying to talk about like, okay, well, this is what is going on here, but you're stopping the flow then, because you're coming back and judging yourself, and then you're like, well, should I put this out there? Well, if you're feeling intuitively that it goes out there, and I know we've drifted way off the topic now.
Yeah, I love it.
But yeah, if you're feeling intuitively like this is stuff that needs to go out there, then that's when you need to stopping yourself and just go, okay, you know, let's let the writing flow. I always joke that you're supposed to write drunk and edit sober, and it's because of that like fluidity that you get, because you don't have that judgment. You're like, yeah, I'm just gonna get it all out, and then you can go back later and say, okay, you know, this works, this doesn't work. Yeah.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah, let it flow. And if you think about nature, like it just flows, right? So there's a natural progression of all the seasons and the way that everything grows. And it's like, imagine if you didn't have any of those blocks and you could just allow that to flow. Mm-hmm. That's what source, that's what God wants for us. He wants us to be, you know, putting that information out into the world. I know I'm getting really spiritual about this, but I can't help it. Yeah. Because it is so spiritual in my perspective. When you're getting ideas and you're channeling them into a physical book, it's like, whoa, you know, this is a big deal. This is something that's going to impact hundreds and thousands of lives. So you have to think about, okay, how can I get out of my own way? And I'm sure you help people with that big time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I had a thought. Along those same lines too, like you were saying about impacting hundreds of thousands of people, I think that part of that mindset of, you know, being able to let things flow too is that we're thinking so small a lot of times.
Yeah.
I've edited several books where it looks like people are talking to their local audience, and I have to go through and say, no, you know, this is big, and you know, people in Australia can buy this book, people in China can buy this book,
yeah,
the world can buy this. So you can't be thinking so small and talking to just the people you already know. It needs to feel like we're friends, but it needs to be big and impactful. And I think that's another thing that keeps people, you know, in this narrow, like, I'm going to give this little bit of information, and then you end up with this tiny little book.
Yeah.
Be like, you know, just let it out, let it go, and this is for lots more people than you ever imagined.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually a great point, because that's what drove me to complete that first book, because it is a daunting, you know, when you're a beginner author, it's a daunting task. You're like, how am I going to write this thing? But then you think about, like, I actually envisioned all of the women that I was going to impact. Like I remember visualizing some young girl reading it on the subway, or like somebody reading it in a park. And that's what really drove me, was like, this is way bigger than me. I'm being used as a vessel to deliver this message to people who need it. And that's really where you get that momentum, that energy that's like, cool, I have to do this, you know?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the visualization. I've actually been reading a book talking about that. So for anybody who's watching, like, what would you tell them? You know, they're sitting here like, I'm on the edge of wanting to write this book. How would visualizing help them? What could they do? Like, just something really simple.
So I always recommend just tapping in, because so often we're so in our head, right? We're like, well, what if it's not going to work? And, you know, what if this never happens? And what if I fail? And blah, blah, blah. It's like, all right, like, let's just close your eyes, get out of your head, and move into your heart space. And from that place is where you can really access your soul, and you can start to let that just inner critic melt away. So what you're trying to do is tap into that subtle voice that's saying, yeah, you can do this. And there's an aspect of you, your soul self, that is pulling you to this video, to watch this video, to want to write a book. And so that's the voice I encourage people to really tap into. And when you can come from that place, you can start to really feel into the feelings, like how would it feel to see people, you know, somebody reading it on a park bench, somebody else, you know, taking it to bed with them, and they're like really struggling with something. Like, start to visualize what that might look like. The different people, whatever your ideal demographic is, if it's women or men or both, really feeling into that, and it becomes more real because whenever you create that visualization in your mind, it exists on some dimension. And now it's just about opening your heart space and allowing that to be magnetized into your life. And by that, I mean, whenever you're visualizing, you're really getting emotional about it. You're opening your heart space, you're putting the intention out there, and you're going to start to see things pop up. Like maybe you're drawn to watch Corey's video right now, or you'll get a soul nudge about something else. And that's when you start to get that breadcrumb trail that's leading you down the path to actually making that book a reality. So it's about really paying attention to these different signs you're going to start getting in your environment. So I really encourage you to start looking within and just quiet that inner voice, because that the inner critic, the inner bully that loves to be so loud, and just trust that your people are out there, and you've had that imprinted on your heart, that book, for a reason. So really following that through. And I would say, to be honest, reaching out to Corey is your first step, because he will help you get through these blocks and to really help you come up with a plan. It's strategic of how to actually make this happen. And having that accountability is so huge also.
Yeah, I completely agree. That was really good information. I know we hadn't even talked about that before this.
Yeah, it just flowed.
But thank you for sharing that, because I do think it's very important to, you know, picture all of that stuff and know where you're going and be able to like hone in on that and say, yep, this is the next step for me. So that was great. Thank you. So what about book number 4? Is there going to be another one coming out sometime, or?
I don't know. I mean, that popped in earlier this week, maybe subconsciously, because I knew we were having this interview, but I feel like it might. It really might. Yeah, it's definitely going to be, you know, spiritual transformation, that kind of thing, but I'll keep you posted.
Okay, yeah, I would be excited to read that one. I know what you're doing and everything, and yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay, well, I've been, let's see. Oh, okay, well, we do have a couple comments. We have a couple hellos. Hello, Mary Lee, and Christine. Hello.
No.
Oh, and Allison says we could be a power combo in book coaching. Good idea. Thank you. Yes, I love that idea. Summit or something later. So yeah. So I wanted to go ahead and wrap this up. Did you have any resources you wanted to share? You want to let people know where they can find you? Any of that stuff?
Yeah, sure. So if you actually want that uplifting resources, that document that I was alluding to that has my book for free, and I have podcasts in there, just really uplifting resources, you can go to bit.ly/COVID-EWS. So I can even post that in the link below in the comments. And then feel free to, you know, reach out to me. I would love to, you know, chat about my experience. If you're looking for a testimonial to work with Corey, I could definitely give it to you with flying colors. She's incredible. And yeah, just connect with me on Facebook. I'd love to chat.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on and talking with everybody. This is incredible. And if anybody has questions, if you're watching this later on and you have questions for us, drop them in the comments. We are happy to answer them. And Christina is going to put that resource in the comments for you guys. So have a good day, and thank you, Christina, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.